In September 2004, Mumbai's elite gathered for a wedding that promised to be the talk of the town. The celebration of Yashika Reddy and Arav Mehta was nothing short of extravagant, as two powerful families united in the most luxurious of settings. However, what was supposed to be the beginning of a blissful new chapter soon spiraled into a nightmare. The night that should have been filled with joy was overshadowed by a horrific crime. Just hours after the ceremony, Arav was found lifeless in their honeymoon suite, his body covered in blood. His once celebratory wedding night had turned into a gruesome crime scene, leaving everyone in shock. If this story is already taking a dark turn, trust me, it only gets more twisted from here. Stick around to find out how everything went horribly wrong. And if you're enjoying this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me keep bringing you stories like this. Yashika Reddy, born in 1982, came from an affluent family in Mumbai. Her father was a well-known businessman who ran a thriving import-export company, and Yashika was accustomed to a life of opulence. From a young age, she was the epitome of beauty, and with her charm and intelligence, she quickly became a social sensation. Despite the luxuries around her, Yashika felt a burning desire for something more. She wanted power, something that was not simply handed to her but something she could control. Yashika didn't yearn for love, she craved influence and success. Her beauty served as a tool in her quest for wealth and status. Throughout her years at university, she became known for not just her academic brilliance, but also for captivating the attention of the wealthiest men around her. Yet, even with everything she had, Yashika found herself unsatisfied. The corporate world was too confining for her. Instead of sitting behind a desk, she thrived in the glamorous world of high society events, where deals were made with a smile and a handshake. She quickly became a fixture at Mumbai's most prestigious gatherings, rubbing elbows with the city's most influential individuals. But Yashika knew her charm could do more than win favor in social circles. She realized it could be a weapon, a tool to influence powerful men who could elevate her to unimaginable heights. By the time she turned 28, Yashika had built a list of wealthy suitors, but none could offer the future she envisioned. Her ambition was more complex than mere romantic liaisons. Then came Arav Mehta, a man who seemed like the answer to all her desires. Arav Mehta, born in 1978, had come from humble beginnings. Raised in a modest household, he had worked tirelessly to build a successful career in the financial sector. By the time he was 26, Arav had established himself as a man of substance, with significant assets and a promising future. He wasn't easily taken by outward appearances, but something about Yashika stood out. It wasn't just her striking beauty, though that was undeniable, it was the blend of intelligence, charm, and poise that seemed to captivate everyone around her. At a lavish gala in Mumbai, Arav's attention was immediately drawn to her. As the evening unfolded, he found himself mesmerized not only by her physical allure but by the sharpness of her mind. They engaged in a conversation that stretched well into the night, and Arav quickly realized that Yashika wasn't just another socialite. She was different, and he was intrigued. For Yashika, Arav was a rare find. He was successful, principled, and ambitious, everything she needed to solidify her future. Unlike other men who could be easily swayed by her beauty and charm, Arav was a man of conviction, and that made him irresistible. In him, Yashika saw an opportunity to cement her position among the powerful, a partner who could provide the protection and stability she desired. Their connection was instant. Arav, whose heart had longed for a partner who could match his values, found himself falling for Yashika. She was everything he had hoped for in a woman, independent, intelligent, and supportive of his ambitions. The more time they spent together, the deeper their bond grew, and Arav became certain that Yashika was the one he had been waiting for. But Yashika, ever the strategist, knew exactly how to play her part. She portrayed herself as the ideal woman, elegant, thoughtful, and attentive, while never seeming too needy. She knew how to make Arav feel special without compromising her own power, and it wasn't long before Arav was completely captivated by her. Their relationship blossomed quickly. In just 6 months, the couple became the talk of Mumbai's high society. They were the perfect pair, admired by all. As their relationship gained momentum, both families enthusiastically supported their union, and it wasn't long before an engagement and a grand wedding were arranged. The celebration, held at one of Mumbai's finest hotels, was nothing short of extravagant. Yet, amidst all the joy and excitement, there was an underlying tension. Arav's best friend, Ishan Varma, had always been by his side, supporting him in both business and personal matters. But unbeknownst to Arav, Ishan had developed feelings for Yashika. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and it began to grow as the wedding approached. At first, their interactions were casual, small talk during wedding preparations. But as the days passed, the attraction between Yashika and Ishan became harder to ignore. There were lingering glances, unspoken moments of tension, and accidental touches that spoke volumes. Yashika knew the danger of what was unfolding, but the thrill of the forbidden made it impossible to resist. One evening, as they both stayed late to finalize wedding plans, the unthinkable happened. Arav had to leave for an urgent meeting, and in his absence, Yashika and Ishan crossed a line. The affair had begun, fueled by lust, excitement, and the exhilaration of betrayal. Their secret meetings continued in the days leading up to the wedding, with every stolen moment adding fuel to the fire. Despite her feelings for Arav, Yashika found herself drawn to Ishan's daring nature. The thrill of sneaking around behind Arav's back was something Yashika couldn't stop. And as the wedding night drew closer, she began to see it not just as a union with Arav, but as a step towards something much bigger, something more dangerous. On the evening of the wedding, Mumbai's elite were in full celebration mode. The grand ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers, and the guests were treated to an opulent feast. The newlyweds, Yashika and Arav, basked in the glow of admiration from friends and family, their love story unfolding like a fairy tale. But beneath the surface, there was a tension that neither could escape. As the festivities came to an end, the couple retreated to their honeymoon suite, a luxurious room adorned with flowers and candles, perfect setting for a night of romantic celebration. Arav, filled with excitement for their future together, held his bride close, whispering sweet promises of a life full of happiness. But Yashika, despite the romantic setting and the vows they had just exchanged, was far from eager. In fact, her mind was elsewhere. After a few moments of shared joy, Arav, ever the considerate man, received a phone call from the front desk regarding a reservation for another guest. Not wanting to leave anything to chance, Arav told Yashika he would handle the matter briefly, promising to return quickly. As soon as the door closed behind him, Yashika's demeanor shifted. The weight of the situation hit her as she quickly sprang into action. She knew this was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment where everything she had worked for could finally come to fruition. Quietly, she slipped out of the suite, her heart racing, and made her way to Ishan's room down the hall. She knocked softly, her pulse quickening with each passing second. When Ishan opened the door, she was met with an intense gaze that mirrored her own desires. The tension between them was palpable. Without a word, they fell into each other's arms, giving in to their forbidden passion. What they didn't know, however, was that Arav too had sensed something was off. Upon his return to the room, he found it empty. Initially, he assumed Yashika was in the bathroom, but as minutes passed without a word from her, a knot of unease tightened in his chest. The silence in the suite seemed wrong, and when he ventured into the hallway to check, his worst fears began to take shape. As Arav approached Ishan's room, the sight that greeted him was nothing short of shocking. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap he could see Ishan and Yashika in an intimate embrace, their passion evident. Arav's heart shattered in that instant. The woman he had married, the woman he had trusted above all others, had betrayed him, and the person who had betrayed him was his closest friend. Rage consumed him, and without thinking, he burst into the room, confronting Ishan and Yashika. The pain and anger in his eyes were evident as he rushed at Ishan, grabbing him by the collar and throwing punches. The violence of the moment was overwhelming, and the two men struggled on the floor. Yashika screamed, trying to intervene, but Arav's fury had overtaken him. In the chaos, Yashika, desperate to stop the scene from escalating further, glanced around the room, searching for something, anything, to help her regain control of the situation. Her eyes fell on a heavy crystal vase resting on a nearby table. Without hesitation, she seized it and with all her might, swung it at Arav's head. The sound of the vase shattering against his skull was deafening. Arav staggered back, blood streaming from the wound as he collapsed onto the floor. Ishan, in a panic, rushed to check on Arav, but the damage was already done. Yashika's plan had taken a horrific turn. With Arav unconscious, the two quickly realized that they had to cover their tracks. There was no way they could explain what had just happened. The consequences would be dire if anyone found out the truth. With Arav lying unconscious on the floor, blood pooling around him, panic set in. Yashika, her breath ragged with fear, quickly regained her composure. The adrenaline rush of her actions, of everything spiraling out of control, fueled her next steps. She knew that if they were to avoid detection they had to act fast. Ishan, still shaken but aware of the gravity of the situation, looked to Yashika for guidance. She was always the one in control, the one who had orchestrated their affair and had managed to keep everything hidden for months. Now, in the face of disaster, she would need to manage the aftermath. Without hesitation, Yashika instructed Ishan to help her stage a robbery. She quickly moved around the room, shuffling the furniture to make it appear as though a struggle had taken place. She scattered a few items, tossed drawers open, and even knocked over a lamp, all to give the illusion that someone had broken in and attacked Arav during a robbery gone wrong. Ishan, still reeling from the violence, did as instructed, wiping the blood off the floor with a towel. Yashika then called the front desk in a panic, her voice trembling with faux distress. "Please help. My husband has been attacked. Someone broke into our room." The hotel staff, responding immediately, raised the alarm. Within minutes, paramedics and security personnel arrived at the scene, finding Arav unconscious on the floor with blood still streaming from his head. Ishan and Yashika both played their parts to perfection. They feigned concern, their faces etched with worry as they explained to the police that they had heard a commotion and rushed in to find Arav beaten and bloodied. At that point, no one suspected the couple. The scene they had so carefully crafted was too convincing. As the police began their investigation, it seemed like the perfect crime. A botched robbery, a tragic accident, and no clear suspects. But there was one thing they hadn't counted on: the thoroughness of the forensic team. Though the initial scene seemed believable, the small, seemingly insignificant details would unravel their entire plan. The first red flag was the lack of forced entry. The hotel room's door showed no signs of a break-in. It appeared that no one had entered the room in any unusual manner, casting doubt on the couple's story. The hotel staff also confirmed that they hadn't seen anyone suspicious entering or exiting the floor at the time of the supposed robbery. Then, forensic experts found an unusual clue: blood on Yashika's dress. It was Arav's blood, a detail that completely contradicted her earlier statements that she had not touched her husband after discovering him injured. The puzzle pieces began to fall into place. The police, suspicious of the discrepancies, turned to the hotel's security cameras for answers. The footage revealed a crucial detail: Yashika leaving the bridal suite alone at 1 a.m. and heading straight to Ishan's room. This was a direct contradiction to her claim that she had remained in the suite while Arav stepped out. The video evidence was damning, but the final nail in the coffin came when a small bloodstain on Yashika's dress was tested. DNA analysis confirmed it was Arav's blood, further proving she had been in close contact with him after the attack. Faced with this irrefutable evidence, the police called Yashika and Ishan in for questioning. At first, they both stuck to their story, playing the roles of devastated victims who had been caught in a terrible, violent crime. But the pressure of the investigation began to take its toll. Ishan, who had never been as strong-willed as Yashika, soon cracked under the pressure. As the hours dragged on, Ishan began to sweat, his hands trembling as the truth weighed heavily on him. He had tried to remain calm, but the mounting evidence was too much. With his head lowered in defeat, he finally confessed everything. Ishan revealed the affair, the betrayal, and the details of that fateful night. He admitted that Yashika had been the mastermind behind the cover-up, that it was she who had suggested staging the robbery and cleaning up the scene. It was Yashika who had guided every step of their plan, from the initial attack to the phone call that alerted hotel staff. Once Ishan's confession came to light, everything began to fall apart. The police now had the full story: a tale of betrayal, manipulation, and a cold-blooded murder that had been covered up with chilling precision. Ishan's admission confirmed the suspicions that had been growing since the beginning of the investigation. Yashika, the woman Arav had loved and trusted, was not just an innocent bystander. She was the architect of his downfall. When confronted with the evidence, Yashika remained eerily composed. There was no desperation in her eyes, no pleading for mercy. Instead, she met the interrogation with cold defiance, refusing to break under the pressure. But even her unflinching exterior couldn't hold up against the weight of the facts. Ishan's testimony had sealed her fate. He described in graphic detail how the fight between Arav and him had escalated, with Arav's anger boiling over when he discovered the affair. But it was Yashika who, in a moment of panic, had taken the crystal vase and struck Arav, the blow that left him bleeding and unconscious. In the chaos that followed, she had masterminded the cover-up, orchestrating the fake robbery and even coaching Ishan on how to play the part of a concerned friend. The police now had video footage, blood evidence, and the damning confession of Ishan, but it was the psychological toll of the case that truly broke Yashika. With her perfect life crumbling around her, she began to see the full scope of her actions. She had lost everything: her wealth, her status, and her carefully crafted persona as the elegant and powerful socialite. The man she had manipulated into marriage was gone, and her lover, the one she had betrayed him with, was now equally implicated. When the trial began, the courtroom was filled with people eager to witness the downfall of the once gilded woman who had seemed to have it all. The media frenzy surrounding the case was relentless, and the public's fascination with the affair and murder captivated the nation. Every detail of the crime, every piece of evidence, was laid bare for all to see. The prosecution wasted no time presenting their case. Security footage from the hotel, showing Yashika's secretive movements through the halls, was shown repeatedly. Forensic experts testified about the blood on her dress and the absence of any signs of a break-in. But it was Ishan's testimony that truly brought the case to a close. His words, filled with regret and guilt, painted a picture of a woman who was willing to go to any lengths to achieve her ambitions, no matter the cost. Yashika's defense team tried to argue that she had acted in self-defense, that Arif's confrontation with Ishan had been violent and threatening. But the evidence was too overwhelming. There was no sign of struggle from Arif, no sign that he had attacked anyone before he was struck by the vase. The jury quickly came to a unanimous decision. Yashika was found guilty of premeditated murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. She sat in the courtroom unmoved by the verdict. There was no outburst, no plea for leniency, just a quiet acknowledgement that everything she had worked for had come to a crashing halt. The woman who had once been the picture of perfection, the epitome of luxury and power, was now a convicted murderer. Ishan, who had been complicit in the crime, was also convicted, though his sentence was less severe. He was sentenced to 10 years for his role in the murder and the subsequent cover-up. His life, once filled with the allure of wealth and success, had been reduced to a shadow of what it had been. The fallout from the trial was swift and devastating. Yashika, once adored by Mumbai's high society, was now seen as a pariah. The lavish life she had enjoyed, the designer dresses, the luxurious parties, the admiration of her peers, was replaced by the stark reality of prison life. Her days were now filled with silence and isolation. The same people who had once envied her beauty and wealth now whispered about her fall from grace. For Arif's family, the pain of his betrayal was immeasurable. They had lost their beloved son, not just to the violent act that had taken his life, but to the cruel deceit of the woman he had trusted with his heart. The betrayal of a friend, the betrayal of a wife, it was a wound that would never heal. As for Ishan, his punishment was a reminder of the consequences of his actions. The thrill of the affair, the excitement of playing with fire, had come at a cost far greater than he could have ever imagined. The man who had once enjoyed the admiration of his peers now faced years behind bars, reflecting on his choices in the quiet darkness of his cell. And Yashika, the woman who had once seemed untouchable, now faced the harsh reality of her own ambition. In her pursuit of power, wealth, and control, she had lost everything: her freedom, her future, and the life she had once dreamed of. What had begun as a glittering fairy tale had ended in tragedy, a stark reminder of the dangers of ambition unchecked by morality. Yashika and Ishan's lives were irrevocably changed, and the lesson they learned was one that would echo in their minds forever. No amount of wealth, power, or beauty can shield you from the consequences of betrayal. What began as a desire for control ended in total loss. Their story serves as a stark reminder of how greed and deceit can destroy even the most enviable lives. Now that you've heard this tragic tale, I want to know your thoughts. What do you think led Yashika down this dark path? How would you have handled the situation if you were in Arif's shoes? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more gripping stories, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps me create more content like this, and I truly appreciate every one of you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.